talking about Chapter 2, the Real Estate Services Act. Inducing a party. Inducing. It's an offense to induce, that means to make someone do something, any party to a real estate contract in order to contract with someone else. Rule 5.5. John agreed to buy Bob's house. It's wrong for a licensee to persuade John to break that contract and buy the house the licensee has listed. Bad realtor. Disclosure of a licensee. Disclose. Did I say disclose? In order to demonstrate a licensee is not taking advantage of their position, the Act states a licensee is required to disclose the fact they are licensed to the public when purchasing a property. As well, where a licensee or associate is selling property, the licensee must make a disclosure to the person acquiring the real estate. This is to include the licensee or associate spouse or family partner, a trust or estate in which the licensee has substantial beneficial interest, a corporation and partnership. For example, they hold 5% or greater interest. Page 13. Disclosure. Bullet A must be made in writing. Bullet B must be made before any agreement is made. And bullet C, disclosure must be on the form required by the real estate council. You got that? Alrighty then. If the licensee does not comply with the disclosure requirements, the seller can choose not to complete the sale or have it set aside within reasonable time. All right? If you don't comply with the disclosure requirements, the seller can choose not to complete the sale or have it set aside within reasonable time. Acceptance of an offer. A licensee must promptly deliver a copy of the signed acceptance, the contract of purchase and sale, to all parties to the transaction in real estate and to the brokerage of the licensee. And in brackets it says here, we all need to see exactly what we bought in writing. Commissions. Net listing. Bullet 1. Can be any amount agreed upon by the licensee and the owner. This is written in the listing agreement. It can be a fixed amount, for example, $5,000, or a percentage of the sale price, 7% on the first $100,000 and 1.5% on the balance, for example. Bullet 2, it cannot be for the amount over and above a price the owner wants. For example, the owner says he wants to sell his house for $250,000 and the licensee can take any amount over that as the commission. This is a net listing and it is illegal. All right. Secret commission or undisclosed compensation is illegal. This is the first bullet. A licensee must promptly disclose to the client and to the licensee's related brokerage the source of remuneration and all relevant facts. Bullet B is about secret commission. A licensee must not act for more than one party to a transaction without the knowledge of all parties for whom the licensee is acting. Property management. It is illegal to provide property management services in BC unless a person is licensed for property management services through the Real Estate Council of BC. This is taken very seriously within the council. Rental property management consists of collecting rents, security deposits, and generally managing the real estate on behalf of the owner. Vicarious liability. The brokerage is under additional liability for their licensees. Under common law principles, as the employer of a licensee, a brokerage is responsible for his or her licensee's actions performed in the course of employment. If a licensee represents a property fraudulently to a buyer during the course of employment and causes the buyer damage, the buyer can sue not only the licensee, but also the brokerage as the employer, even if the brokerage was not aware of the misrepresentation, unless this happens outside the scope of the licensee's employment. Okay. Page 14, the Real Estate Development Marketing Act. The RESA sets disclosure requirements on developers marketing various forms of real estate development, such as strata lots, cooperatives, timeshares, and shared interests. It regulates the marketing of developmental units within BC. Development properties include subdivisions, strata properties, cooperatives, timeshares, and other shared interest in land or residential leasehold complexes. The Act is protecting purchasers by requiring developers who market or intend to market units in development properties to, bullet 1, meet any preliminary requirements or approvals applicable to the type of property to be marketed. That means like getting development approvals from the City of Surrey, for example. Bullet 2, ensure appropriate steps are taken to pay the costs of utilities or other services. And bullet 3, prepare and file a disclosure statement in the form required by the Superintendent of Real Estate. Real estate development property. The Act defines development property in relation to the number of development units created, such as, bullet 1, 5 or more subdivision lots in a subdivision, unless each lot is 64.7 hectares or more. Bullet 2, 5 or more bare land strata lots in a bare land strata plan. Bullet 3, 5 or more stratified lots in a stratified building. Bullet 4, 2 or more cooperatives. Bullet 5, 5 or more time-shared interests in a timeshare plan. Bullet 6, 2 or more shared interests in land in the same parcels. 2 or more shared interests in land in the same parcels. And bullet, Bullet 7, 5 or more leasehold units in a residential leasehold complex. Real estate development units can be a subdivision lot, bare land strata lot, cooperative interest, timeshare interest, a shared interest in land, or a leasehold interest, provided they are located in a development property. Definitions. Subdivision. Subdivision is defined as land divided into lots or parcels. Other than the Strata Property Act, a developer must comply with all of the marketing requirements of the Act before a subdivided lot can be marketed for sale or lease unless exempt. Page 15 of Real Smart Notes. Strata lots. Can be a strata lot in a stratified building or bare land strata lot. Bullet 1. The strata plan or the bare land strata plan must be deposited in the land title office. For example, as far as I know, let's see if there's a land title office here. So land title offices, BC. So we've got one on 86th Street in Suite 300. There's one on 455 Columbia Street, Kamloops. There's one in Victoria. All right. So we've got different places around BC. All right. Different places around BC. And yeah. Where am I here? Oh yeah, and so we've got bullet 2, building permit has been issued, okay, for the strata lot. Bare lot strata describes a development in which there are no buildings when the subdivision occurs. Cooperative interest. This is an interest held in a cooperative association, either as a shareholder, partner, or member. A company owns a parcel of land and sells shares and intends to build, for example, a fourplex. They find 4 different individuals or families that want to buy shares and the right to occupy one of the 4 suites. Licensee can sell such shares because the sale of shares provides the right to occupy land, and this is exempt from the registration requirements of the Securities Act. Timeshare interest. This is an interest in a plan that allows a person to use land on a periodic basis. Often the sale of timeshare interest gave the owner the use of the land on a week-by-week basis or 1/5 interest, which would allow the person with a timeshare interest to use the property 10 weeks out of the year. Shared interest in land. This is where a developer offers a shared interest in land in a development where the purchaser buys or leases the land with at least one other person and enters into an agreement that restricts the purchaser's use of land to only a part of the land. Each purchaser enters into an agreement to occupy 1 unit. Okay? This is for all of them. Each purchaser agrees to occupy a different unit. Marketing requirements. This is another title. The red must says that developers must satisfy requirements before they can market a development. For example, the developer must obtain approval prior to entering into a contract with the buyer from this, so they get this approval from the superintendent. They've got to, the developer must provide a disclosure statement, and the buyer must give the opportunity to read it. Okay, must be given the opportunity to read it. Okay, so the developer gives a disclosure statement, the buyer reads it. The purchaser can rescind the contract in writing to the developer within 7 days of A, the date of purchase agreement was made, B, the date the developer obtained a written statement from the purchaser acknowledging that the purchaser had an opportunity to read the appropriate disclosure statement. Failure for the developer to comply. It could be fines up to 100 grand. That's the first offense for a corporation, and fines up to 200 grand, subsequent offenses for a corporation. For a first offense, fines up to 100 grand for an individual and may be imprisoned for up to 2 years or both. For a second offense, fines can be up to 200 grand and imprisonment. The Real Estate Council can discipline a licensee who fails to comply to provide a buyer with a disclosure statement. Okay, now let's see. That was so thorough, I don't know if there's anything left here. Chapter 2 of my textbook. All right. I cannot see anything which we have not taken up here. Okay. That's really weird. Okay, anyway, there's something here about 212, employee versus independent contract. So it says here that you can work for a brokerage as an employee or an independent contractor. That's pretty interesting. Generally, an employee is a person receiving or entitled to wages for work performed for another, or a person an employer allows directly or indirectly perform work normally performed as by an employee. Employers will deduct income tax, EI, and CPP contributions. Now, if you're an independent contractor, you'll be self-employed. All right? So you're not subject to income tax, employment, insurance, and CPP deductions. All right. That's going to be a whole new ball of wax. Alrighty then. Anything here that I can see? Alright, I have a couple stars here in 216. The main function of a real estate licensee devoted to trading services is to act on behalf of others who wish to deal in property. Therefore, it is particularly important that when licensees buy, sell, or rent real estate for themselves, there should be no reason to suspect that they may have taken advantage of their position. For this reason, the Act imposes condition on the purchase of property by a licensee. So basically, you got to disclose. All right? All right. Anything else? Commission, secret commissions, we've already talked about that. Basically, if you're acting for both parties, you got to reveal. Okay, there's something here about out of province. Commission can be paid to someone who's licensed in a jurisdiction other than BC for equivalent real estate services. Therefore, if a licensee in Alberta has been instructed to find a buyer for a property in BC, it would be necessary for him or her to act in conjunction with the licensee from BC, and vice versa. Isn't that nice? Okay. All right, I think... Oh yeah, deposits are held in a trust fund of one bank account of the brokerage, and they're called a stakeholder, a middleman. All right, we've got different kinds of discipline process. If you break the law, you got urgent orders. that can happen. So they might make an order, the discipline committee of the real estate council may make an order suspending your license, etc., etc., without holding a hearing. Maybe it's a hurry. And then we have consent orders. Once a licensee receives a notice hearing, licensee may choose not to dispute allegations set on the notice. All right. So this is a consent order. In order to proceed without a hearing, licensee must consent to the disciplinary committee making a specified discipline order. So that's basically skipping the hearing. Disciplinary hearings, and then there's suspensions, etc. I don't know, it says here there's an appointment of a receiver. Either the real estate council or superintendent of real estate can apply to the court for an order for appointment of a receiver or receiver manager of the property of the licensee. Section 59. The court can authorize the receiver to wind up or manage the business and affairs of the licensee. The receiver is authorized to exercise all the powers necessary to wind up or manage. That's in 2.23. Appeals to the Financial Services Tribunal. In most circumstances in which a licensee is subject of a decision or order from the real estate council or superintendent of real estate, the licensee may appeal the decision, and they appeal to the Financial Services Tribunal. Section 54. All right. All right. Now, under the, I think it's the RESA? The superintendent of real estate, the role is responsible for investigating unlicensed activity. Okay? So you do something. Superintendent of real estate is responsible for investigating unlicensed activity. And they can also investigate a licensee to determine whether a licensee has acted in a manner seriously detrimental to the public interest by breaking the rules. All right. So here are some offenses that are possible. You can fail to hold a real estate license. You can fail to pay the funds into a trust account. You can improperly withdraw money from the trust account. You can interfere with an investigation. You can fail to comply with the order of the council or a disciplinary committee or a superintendent, or you can make a false statement in the record. You can get in trouble. First conviction, $5,000, and then later on, $100,000. Maximum fine is first conviction of $50,000 and 2 years in jail, and then later on is $100,000 and 2 years in jail. Okay, wow. And we already talked about the RESA. The Real Estate Marketing Development Act. Okay, I think we've got everything. 2.28. We've got disclosure statements. RESA requires developers to prepare and file a disclosure statement with the superintendent of real estate. It requires developers to provide potential purchasers with copies of the filed disclosure statement. One of the central objectives of RESA is to ensure that material facts are provided to purchasers when development units are being marketed to them. Section 15.1 provides that the developer must not enter into an agreement for sale or lease of a development unit with a purchaser unless a copy of the disclosure statement has been provided, the purchaser had the opportunity to read it, and has provided the developer with a written statement acknowledging that the buyer has had the chance to read it. Okay, all right. Okay, material changes. As soon as the developer becomes aware that the disclosure statement does not comply with RESA, the developer must file and deliver a new or amended disclosure statement to the potential buyers, etc., etc. Rescission. In the law of contracts, a rescission amounts to the unmaking or undoing of a contract from the beginning, as opposed to a termination. So, who has the right to rescind? A purchaser has the right to rescind by serving a written notice, so they can back out of a purchase. Okay. All right, they can back out of a purchase. So there's a right, and it's within 7 days of receiving a disclosure notice, right? So you got to serve written notice, and you've got 7 days after the later of number one, the date that the purchase agreement was made, or two, the date the developer obtained a written statement from the purchaser, acknowledging that the purchaser had the opportunity to read the disclosure statement. So there's 7 days. And if you fail to disclose this, to deliver the disclosure statement to the purchaser, basically the purchaser may rescind the purchase agreement at any time by serving a written notice of rescission to the developer. There you go. Now we're going to deal with other things, chapter 3, but isn't this exciting?